So let's get started. So, how to spot property. I always tell people there are so many ways to decide what property you're going to develop, especially if you're looking for property yourself. But the first way is simply driving around. Take a leisurely drive 1 day or 2 days and just go in your local area, drive around, see what is available, and just look out the window. The very first property I ever recommended for development was because I was driving past the property. I called the owners because I knew them. And I said, have you ever thought about developing your property on this particular corner of a major intersection? Because no one else had developed, look, all the other three corners were developed, but not theirs. And they said, we hadn't thought about that. We thought about keeping this family land in our family for years and years and years and passing it down to our children. And there's nothing wrong with doing that with family land, church land, or any other kind of land. But if you pass it down from year to year to year, and you're only passing down the fact that you own it, and you're only passing down the fact that you pay taxes on it, then what generational wealth is really being built from that process? What are you really teaching people other than to hoard and hold on to the land forever? My strategy is to teach people how to take the land, develop it, but still own it, and then benefit from it financially throughout all the generations. That's the strategy. The strategy is not always to just hold vacant land when you have no intention of doing anything with it. It's different if you're going to hold it for a specific cause, you're waiting on some infrastructure to come in or water, sewer to be built, etc. But if you're just holding it just for the sake of holding it, that's hoarding. So you want to really evaluate as a family, as a church, as a group, as an organization, why you're really holding on to this property and what your intended use is, because it could be costing you more money than it's making you. And that's not where you want to be. But when you're driving around, you're able to see things like identifying where there's an underdeveloped corner or part of a city or a county, or where there's an opportunity to build some housing. For instance, if a highway just expanded to a particular area and you notice that when you're driving around, then you can identify, oh, we probably need some housing here. Or maybe there should be a gas station here, or maybe there should be a grocery store here. Just use your reasonable skills to think, if I lived here, what would I want? What would I need to experience in order to move out to this particular area, especially rural areas? And there are development loans just for rural America that are offered by the USDA. So there are many different opportunities that you'll learn about just simply from driving around. Another place to find a property is just by getting online and searching. There are so many sites that you can look up and look at that will allow you to see foreclosed properties, vacant lots, tax properties that are available, or just cheap and inexpensive properties that you may want to put your eyes on. You may not want a cheap or inexpensive property. You may want a property that is valued really well so that you can develop it and really drive the value up. That's your business. You can do that too. But either way, get behind that computer and do some Googling, do some research, set yourself up to learn as much as you can from the computer and from online. And another way that I recommend people spot properties is through networking and talking to other real estate agents, talking to other people. I always talk about property development. I talk about it so much that people think I am just an expert, and I'm really not an expert. I just love to learn, and I'm a hard worker. But when you're in circles and you say, hey, do you know anyone who owns any land? You will be absolutely surprised at how many people will say, well, my great aunt's cousin's brother's niece owns 1 acre in fill in the blank. And it usually involves a place that is very, very much in high demand, or a place that you're familiar with, or a place that you know about and you can see, oh, the value is here. So be open to talking about what you do and what you're interested in, because you never know who may be willing to help you along the way. Now, here are some site selection criteria that I highly recommend you keep in mind when you're trying to select your first site to develop, if the site is not already selected for you because you're doing it for a client. So the first thing is location. As a real estate agent, we always hear the 3 L's: location, location, location. Location matters, but be open, because this is not the same type of location. Sometimes as a real estate developer, you have to have a vision that's bigger than yourself. You have to have a vision that's bigger than everything you've been taught, which is if it's not in a highly commercial area, then it's probably not worth investing in. Well, that's not necessarily true, because what if you're the first development that comes there that ends up making it a very valuable place to be? So be open to the fact that you may be the first one to come there and you may bring the value, in which case location, location, location is important, but it's important because you're bringing the value, not because the value is already there. Second thing to look out for is zoning. Doesn't mean zoning doesn't mean the current zoning doesn't mean that you can't build what you want to build. It simply means this is what it says today. And you need to know what it says today, and you need to understand what all the letters mean. R typically means residential. I typically means industrial. C typically means commercial of some kind. And then there are so many variations of those big letters, right? So know what the zoning is and know what the zoning could be. Next is proximity to utilities. Do not ever look at a piece of property without understanding all of the utilities that are necessary. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't buy a piece of property or develop a piece of property if it doesn't have all the regular utilities, such as water, power, sewer, and gas. But what you do need to know is what would the investment be if you need to bring infrastructure, if you've got to build water, into the plan, if you've got to build new sewer into the plan, or septic, or some type of alternative system for water or for septic or for sewer. Either way, you've got to understand the utilities. Proximity to amenities. How far is the gas station? How far is the grocery store? How far are all the city services that any one person may need to experience life? Just know all of those things before you select your site. Risk management. We talk about risk management all the time. That is something that you absolutely must know and must have in your repertoire when you are developing or figuring out what site you're going to work with. What kind of risk is in place for this particular site? And then follow-up skills. If you're out in the field and you see a site and you call the owner and they don't call you back, you've got to keep calling. You've got to keep sending paper letters. Sometimes you may have to go to the owner's house and knock on the door and say, hey, I know you own a property across town. I'm interested in buying it. Is this property available? Your follow-up still has to be in place for even just selecting a site if you do not have a site already selected for you, as I mentioned, because you're working with a client. Now, I want you to grab our site selection criteria checklist for developers because this will help you get started. And this image here, I want you to see, there's always more to land than what you see. There's always stuff underneath the surface. Sometimes there's an underground storage tank. Sometimes there's oil. Sometimes there's gas. Sometimes there's nothing but dirt. Other times there are other things that are environmentally hazardous. So I put this image here to just say, this is the beginning of our site selection. This is not the full evaluation. That'll come next. But when you're selecting your site, first, you want to start with just purely looking and seeing what's available. Now, if you see this piece of property, you can make a lot of assumptions about this particular piece of land. I've sold this land once. My client still owns it. We're going to develop it. But for now, you can see trees, right? You can see it looks relatively flat, and you can also see power lines, okay? So it's so far like it looks pretty good, right, from the surface. Well, in digging deeper, what we learned is, and we learned this all through the due diligence process before he even closed, that it requires an alternative septic system. So we don't just get to plug into city sewer. We've got to build a septic tank. It also has a slope in the back. So we had to go out and we had to walk the property. And when you walk the property in the back, it slopes down, but it's not too bad. It's enough to make a nice scenic view, but not too bad to where it would cause a lot of cost to get the property where it needs to be before building. The other thing we had to do was to understand water and how the water works. So we are able to tap into city water, thankfully, but not city sewer. So we have to build a septic, but tap into city water. So all those things are good. And then it does have access to electricity. As you can see, the lines are there. That doesn't always mean that you can tap in, but that's basically what it means. 99% of the time, if you see lines like that, you can tap into the electricity. And then it also has access to gas. But depending on how we build the house, we may not need natural gas. Okay, so this is just for a house site. But this is the beginning of when you're looking at a property, how you start just thinking through, okay, what do I see? What do I see and what does it feel like? And then walk the land, become one with the land. What does it feel like to put my feet on the ground and walk the property? Then you can appreciate and understand the scale of the property. So when you go further, you've selected the site and you decide, now I want to evaluate it further. Now you're looking at a lot of different things, and we help you through this process by providing yet another checklist to help you as you're evaluating the site itself. So the first thing is looking at zoning and land use. I've talked about this before. Make sure you understand what are the current uses of the property. Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? Or any variation of the few. Next, what are the environmental and physical conditions? Is there any type of environmental hazard that is currently on the property? The only way you will know that is by hiring an engineer, looking up any property records that are in existence for this particular property, and then understanding if there are chemicals present or anything else in the soil that could make this a very negative property for you to develop, because environmental hazards can cost a ton of money to mitigate. So you want to understand what they are. And an engineer can help you by testing soil and by giving you a geotechnical overview of what's happening with the property. Topography and site grading. How steep is it? How, flat is it? And what is it going to cost to get the water, the sewer, power, and all of those lines, gas lines laid on the property? Any utility and infrastructure access. What's going on with the utilities? Are they available? Are they not? Do you have to bring them, or are you good? Right? Accessibility and transportation. How easy is it to get to this property, and how difficult is it? Is it up a hill? Is it down a hill? Does it snow there? Is it pretty, is it relatively mild temperature, mild weather? Like here, I experience in North Carolina, which is where I live. What's the weather like? And how is this property going to be accessed in the future? Proximity to amenity and services. Again, how far away are some of the grocery stores, the actual stores to buy goods and services, and then also restaurants and other things that people need access to, like gas stations. Legal and tax considerations. This I cannot underscore enough. You have to know, is the property in foreclosure? Are there family members tied to the property? Multiple family members that maybe never were contacted? Is the property in a trust? Whatever you're looking at to purchase the property, make sure you understand what kind of legal ramifications are in place, or what types of things are there and exist for this property before you just buy it or before you start developing it. One time I sold a property that had 34 family members and one was incarcerated. So by the time we closed, we had to hunt down every single family member. One was in a hotel and we had to go get her signature. One, like I said, was in prison and we had to utilize or work with the warden to be able to notarize the documents once they were signed by the owner. So there are many, many things you need to confirm and check before you decide that this is going to be the property you develop. Market demand and community demographics. What does the market say? If you're a seasoned real estate agent, you know how to pull a comparable sales report. You know how to really understand if this house or this commercial project is going to perform in this particular area. And you also know what's going on in the community. At least you should, or you should be able to research that and understand. So know what's happening in the market before you embark upon this journey. Permitting and regulatory compliance. I can't say enough about permitting. Do not build a thing without a permit. Do not tear down a thing without a permit. Do not do anything without checking with the local permitting office, zoning office, city planning office, etc., or town planning. Don't do a thing without their permission, because you could be putting yourself at risk for having to reverse all the money you just spent and everything you just did if you don't get permission up front. So a permit is permission to do whatever it is you want to do. So make sure you get a permit, make sure you're in compliance. And lastly, a cost and feasibility analysis. This just basically says, should we do this or should we not? Are we going to make a profit or are we not? Is it going to cost too much to develop, basically, and throw our profit margin, numbers off, and we're not going to make a profit? You have to know that up front. You got to know how much everything costs, or at least a very good estimate, and then estimate on top of that just to confirm. But you must know how much this is going to cost before you go on the journey of exploring a particular property. All of that is covered under your property evaluation. Now, on the left, I want you to see one of my first developments. And this particular development is just 13 townhomes. And you see the engineering plans of this particular townhome development. Lots of scaling, lots of detail. On the bottom, you kind of see the existing plan really grayed out. And then you see the red on top, which is the current plan. This is how your plans will look once you get to this stage of development. So we came a long way from the very beginning with just rectangles on a sheet of paper and one single sheet of paper. These plans are now 20 pages. They're huge and they're, much more developed than when we started. So in our property evaluation site criteria checklist, you'll be able to go through all of the stages to get to this place of seeing a fully developed project to be built and to look like this on paper. And on the right, you see this big, beautiful piece of land. And it is so beautiful. Most land acquisitions do not start off like this, nor do they continue to be this beautiful. So if you want land that looks like this, you probably don't want to develop it. You just need to keep this as your common space because this is beautiful. But this is why I got into this also, because I love land. All right, zoning restrictions real quick. When you are working through zoning restrictions, as I mentioned, you need to know what the current zoning is, know what the future plans are by the city, understand their 20 or 40-year development plan. Every city and county has planned for the future, okay? That's how they operate. They plan for the future. They plan for now, but they plan 20, 30, 40 years out. So they have a plan somewhere that shows, here are our intentions for the future. Know what those plans are before you start developing. Know what the state plans are. Know what the Department of Transportation plans are. Are they bringing in a new highway, a toll road? Are they getting ready to take a bunch of people's properties by eminent domain and all of a sudden they all come up for sale? Know that before you get started. Ask as many questions as you can. You kind of got to become Inspector Gadget when you are exploring land, because if you don't, it's like buyer beware, realtor beware, real estate agent beware, developer beware. And then know if there are any utility expansion plans. Is the local power utility getting ready to expand their grid? Is the gas company getting ready to develop or dig deeper lines or more lines? Is the sewer company or the local sewer authority getting ready to expand sewage? In my city, we had a sewer shortage. And in the sewer shortage, we saw that you had to get a permit for sewer first before you get a building permit. You have to get sewer permitting first. Well, if there are no sewer allocations because there's no sewer, then guess what? You have to wait. You can't develop. Well, there are costs to holding land and costs to holding properties and costs to holding personnel and contractors on staff while you wait for sewer allocation. So now we're being told that the sewer authority is getting ready to build out new sewer taps and new sewer expansion. So where that is going to take place, those land opportunities around there, not good places to buy land. Why? Because they're getting ready to expand sewer in those areas. So these are the things you have to know when you're developing, when you're evaluating a property. Okay. And that concludes lesson 2 on evaluating your site and choosing your first site to develop.